and very excited to be here this morning on this session. I like VMUGs. I've always had fun doing them. We used to work for an organization that did just VMware products, so it was great fun to spend a lot of time with the VMUG. Excited to be here this morning on this session. I like VMUGs. I've always had fun. I'm getting myself coming back.
Yes.
Hopefully I'm okay now. So yeah, so the plan this morning is to do a short slide set, I'm afraid. I know it's not always the favorite thing to do, but it's just useful to do some positioning. This is an interesting space, the world of cloud, multi-cloud management. There are many different approaches, and there are many different problems. That's the other interesting thing for us. So what I'd like to do is start with a short slide deck, which is going to help you understand Morpheus positioning and what we see in the market. And then what we will do is we will go into a demo. I am a technical guy. I love giving demos. I like demoing our products. And as long as my laptop stays live, we should be good to see a whole demo of Morpheus. Just a small part of Morpheus you'll see this morning. But hopefully you'll get the idea. So what we're talking about is enabling hybrid cloud orchestration. Really is the sort of the general theme. We're seeing a lot of customers, a lot of our enterprise customers looking at, obviously their private infrastructure, with you guys on the call, the VMUG, it's, primarily VMware. Virtualization has been around a long time now. It's core to many organizations, the way they run their compute and all their services. But we are also seeing people looking at moving some into the public cloud. Some are looking at moving completely into the public cloud. But what we're seeing a lot of is let's use both. Let's get the best of both worlds. And that's really a core strength of Morpheus, is that ability to give you the transition from private infrastructure into public, but also work in both. And in fact, what we're seeing with regards our sort of market, and the most important customers to us and the ones that we have the most of are our VMware enterprise customers who are using VMware. And the first thing that we do, and you'll see this in a moment, is we can help turn that private infrastructure into a private cloud, a true private cloud, and allow users to interact with that just as if they were in a public service. And then as your business grows, as you want to change your technology stack, and as you maybe just want to experiment or use it for particular use cases, you can then bring in public infrastructure as well. So hopefully that's what I'll show you today. Before I do, like I say, we were talking about why we see this as a market. Why does Morpheus exist? Well, the important stat is that, as I just said, what we're seeing, and this is IDC. They're seeing that an awful lot, almost all our organizations are looking at some sort of public and private cloud, some sort of hybrid. It's becoming the norm, whether it's used in production in hybrid, or they're using on-prem for production and public cloud for test and dev, or they're going to put the containerization up there. But whatever it is, there's a mix of both. The important thing for us is that then when companies start looking at this, they struggle with how they manage that, how they work with that. So they are saying we need some way of managing this, some way that we can look across all of these components and manage it in a simple way. But one of the challenges is that there is an awful lot of complexity. Many of us understand VMware and make that work, but it's then just not VMware. It's then all of the other moving parts of an enterprise, your CMDB, your IP address management, your networking configuration, those types of things. So that causes complexity, but that then compounds when you move up into public cloud as well. And actually what we're seeing is that some organizations, and we've talked to many, have gone and looked at public cloud and actually going, we want to bring that back now. It's not giving us the benefits we thought. We're not saving the money. That's often one we hear is, we're not saving the money we thought. It's actually more expensive to do it this way. That doesn't mean that they just move the workload back, and we'll talk about sort of cost management and those sorts of things. But the ability to bring workloads back is also important. And as I just said, there's a belief that people are overspending, and that the benefit they're seeing isn't quite as great as they thought. And another one that we're very excited by is building self-service. So providing some way of moving the workload, the blockages within inside an organization, removing those blockages and making it easier, more streamlined for users who want to go and build services, go and build workloads, allow them to do that. It's something a lot of people have tried to do with automation tools. We're now getting into the world of infrastructure as code, and that's seen by some as the answer. But for a lot of organizations, that isn't going to be the total solution. In fact, that introduces levels of complexity as well. So some sort of self-service. And as I go through, I'll mention some of the companies that we're working with and the ways they're using it. So this is a problem. This is a problem statement slide. This is where a lot of our enterprises are. You look at the user community in here, typically say, the person in the top left there is trying to do their job, and maybe they're part of a development team, or they might be part of an operations team that have been asked to go and create a new service within the organization. And years and years and years ago, it would have been very simple. You spin up a physical server, you plug it into the network. Your time delays were ordering the kit. That got simpler with virtualization. You now have the kit, but you just need to spin up the server. And maybe in the early days that was easy, but as more and more infrastructure comes into play, more and more things become interconnected, the complexity just grows. So what you often end up with is a challenge from trying to get from the user requesting a service, either an email or through a ServiceNow ticket, service request ticket, or some other method, to the machine being built can take, again, we've done some work with our customers. Some of our customers are taking up to 3 weeks to get a single server. And then for longer, if it becomes an application stack, to get that machine properly built within the organization, linked into all the services it needs to be, and conforming to all the regulatory compliance that machine has to have. So this is the challenge. And I say lots of moving parts. So what Morpheus is trying to do is help organizations understand what they're trying to achieve, and wherever they want to be on the journey. And there's a wonderful term which I'm sure you guys come across very often, is the world of DevOps. Now seems to be a current focus for a lot of people. That this dream of everything is code, and I can push builds very quickly and easily, multiple builds a day, an hour, all the way through to actually more traditional infrastructure with servers running, maintaining them, keeping them working properly. So people are in different places within the journey, and different people have different requirements in there. And actually that's where Morpheus came from. So just like to mention why we think we can do what we're doing, and it came from our own requirement. So we were developed by a team of guys that are called Bertram Labs. They actually are part of a large private equity business called Bertram Capital, and they were tasked with managing up to 20 infrastructures, 20 different infrastructures. Bertram Capital go out and buy businesses, they bring them in, they have all of their different IT infrastructures used for business, and Bertram Labs were tasked with, okay, go and manage that, go and build them new applications that make their business more efficient, so that we can sell that business for a profit. That's what private equity does. So Bertram Labs said, this is a challenge, this is difficult. And our CTO sat down and started to design the sort of processes that he thought would be beneficial to an organization like Bertram, and wrote them for himself and for his team to use. Of course, the owner of a private equity business is a smart person, and he saw what our CTO was doing, and he said, that looks like something we could sell. And that's where Morpheus Data came from. So we've come from a world of necessity, of need, and we've developed into an actual solution that is actually still used by Bertram Labs and by the Bertram Capital family of companies, but now we sell globally. So that's what Morpheus is and where we sit in, and we are trying to help our organizations provide that self-service across multiple clouds and help you really cover that DevOps gap. But as you'll see also now, there's other areas that we are helping on in the ops world. And what we want to do is give you a unified single platform. You'll see that. We want you to be agnostic. Our background, because of where we came from, there wasn't a, we're going to do this on VMware and then build out from there, or we're going to do this in Amazon and we're going to build out from there. We had 20 companies, 20 different, or I guess maybe 10 or 12 different infrastructure types to support straight away. So we've always had that. We're not tied to any typical underpinning infrastructure. And then the other thing is, as business, what we want to be is responsive. And we'll talk about both our product, the way it works, and also some things we've done recently to even change the way our product works to make it even better in the world of responsiveness. So what we want to do is look at the things that are common to all of our customers, and the one that we see, the customers we talk to, is they need self-service. They want to provide some sort of capability to go and build maybe just a Windows server, maybe a Linux box, or maybe it's a PaaS database on Azure, or it's a fully formed multi-tier application. And that's a common thread with Morpheus. Our enterprise customers, that's who we're talking to. They're looking for this internal self-service capability, this private cloud. And our other large customer install base is MSPs, so managed service providers, who are competing now with the large hyperscalers, the Amazons, Azures, Googles. And so we provide them an interface where their users can come in and very quickly and easily build services in their infrastructure and use public cloud if they want. We want to provide catalogs, very simple to bring in. It's a very important thing. One of the key things about Morpheus is simplicity, trying to keep it easy. And how we don't want to be another level of complexity in the environment that then you scratch your head trying to manage all the time. We want to make that nice and easy. And then make it a shopping cart, have the ability to say, yep, these are the things I want, and build them, or have just very simple one-click type engagement. But also provide that through a GUI. And that's what I'm going to spend my time in today. When we get to the demo, we're going to be spending our time inside the browser interface. But Morpheus has a full command line as well. So if you prefer to use, black and green screen, and you want to, type strings of code, and you like to load JSON payloads up as command scripts, you can absolutely do that. Or if you want to maybe go further out and do integrations into other tools, which is very common for us, we have a full API as well. And what we're looking at is the process of the framework, the build, the control, and how we flow around, the taking a machine, making it available, running it, working with it, keeping it on track, and then if we need be, grow it, make it bigger, scale as demand grows. And the purpose of this is, these are some of the areas that we identify. You want to be able to trigger, you want to be able to start the build, self-service, through the GUI, through the API. What you are allowed to build, you need to control that. You can't just give somebody a self-service catalog and go, build what you want, wherever you want, don't worry. You need to put the control, role-based access control in place, tying in with IAMs and other identity source tools. Then the ability to provision either single machines, full clusters. We're going to talk about Kubernetes, for example. Morpheus has the ability to build and manage Kubernetes clusters on any cloud. And all the way through those different processes, the important thing to realize is that Morpheus has capability in all of these areas. We can do all of these things in our product today. We have, in some cases, just enough functionality. In others, it's a very deep, because it's a core part of our product. But the other thing that we do, and this is a key part of it, is that we have a wide number of what we call native or codeless integrations. So with 90 plus codeless integrations, what this means is, if you are using a tool, if you're using, for example, NSXT to manage your network today, Morpheus has some built-in SDN and can do that across cloud, but if you've got NSXT, we can connect to that. You give us credentials, we can now pull in resource from there. We can then manipulate NSXT as part of build processes, etc. It's still managed by the network team, but they make resources available to your users through Morpheus, and they can use that. We can do build out of applications, but we're seeing a lot of customers using, for example, Ansible as a tool that is very powerful, very easy to use. Morpheus can use Ansible. We can be integrated with your Ansible infrastructure, connect us to your Git repository. We can start using your Ansible playbooks. So this is a sum of the integrations that we have out of the box. I'm going to show you all of the. I'm going to show you the integration lists as we go through the product. I'll show you the integration points because it's very easy to understand how simple this is to do. And of course, the other thing that we need to be able to integrate is cloud. And I talk about cloud, and I talk of obviously public cloud, so Amazon, Azure, Google, Oracle, etc. As clouds, of course, and we can integrate with all of those. And I'm going to show you that. But we also integrate, as I've mentioned, this is the important thing, into on-premise solutions as well. And I talk about those as clouds. So when I say cloud, that could be Amazon, but it could also be VMware. It could be OpenStack. Again, it could be Oracle. So we support all of these different integrations to all of these clouds. Not all of them at the same level. Some of them have different capabilities. Some of them are just not used as much, so we don't see as such demand, so we don't do much development on them. But the key ones, VMware, OpenStack, Hyper-V, Amazon, Azure, Google, are really very heavily supported by Morpheus. And I mentioned we talk about I talked about DevOps is a term that many people are using now, and what we've done is we've looked at the areas that people are working with technologies like Morpheus, and we've actually extended that now. We're not just talking about DevOps. We're looking at things like the ability to build and manage the infrastructure. We refer to that as your cloud ops, your guys who are working with the infrastructure, your VMware management team who are running VMware. Well, Morpheus sits in, pulls information from there, can do some basic integration with that, or some basic configuration of that. We're not trying to replace vCenter. That's always going to be a core part of the tool, but we then provide the ability to surface parts of that up to your users. And then, as I said already, we always actually have been containerized. It's one of our visions of our CTO that we'd always be ready for containerization. And we've always been able to do that, but we've extended that now. We have a full Kubernetes cluster management. We can build a Kubernetes cluster in VMware, on OpenStack, on Hyper-V, on Amazon, on Azure, or Google. And we actually have a standardized CNCF certified Kubernetes cluster type that we have. We also can integrate with existing Kubernetes cluster types as well, if you've already got those, and then provision your containerized apps onto those. We're looking at security, mentioned role-based access control, but that goes all the way through to, for example, having machines running and be able to do things like SCAP scans, so security, reporting across machines that you've got running within your environment. Morpheus can do that and time with that security methodologies. So SecOps. We've then got developers, guys who are, the guys that are pushing a lot of this automation, the push to public cloud, because I can do things in script. So we have the developers covered with the way we work, and that's the DevOps. And then the final one, which again, if you're going to public cloud, is vital, is the ability to understand how are we spending money, where are we spending money, so the FinOps team. But as you'll see, what Morpheus also allows you to do is, because we're doing that on the public cloud, we have the capability to bring that into your private cloud. So now you want to understand, how much people are spending on your private infrastructure. You want to do internal chargeback. You want to be able to do a cost comparison. Is it cheaper to run on VMware or on Amazon? We can help you with that as well. And just to finish, a little bit of excitement for us. The Gartner Quadrant, always seen as a way, particularly large enterprises, understanding what they should be looking at in any given space. Morpheus was in the leader quadrant. It's very exciting for us to be there. We put a lot of work into this, and we got excellent feedback from Gartner, and also Gartner peer reviews. We rate very, very highly. And the other exciting for us, of course, you've got the quadrant, but behind that is all the metrics and the build out for that. And what was really exciting for us is that in 3 out of the 4 critical capabilities, so the self-service, the provisioning capability, the governance part of it, the role-based access control, the making sure people do the right things in the right place, and the brokerage, the connecting to the public clouds, the private infrastructures, we came out top. And the only one we dropped down was resource management, which is sort of tying into maybe a little bit of the cost management piece. And this is now 18 months ago they did this, and we were just starting our journey on that. Even there, we came second by 0.01 of a decimal point. We've invested heavily in that over the last 18 months, and now we would really believe we would win this category quite easily as well. So 3 out of the 4 critical capabilities. Okay, what I'm going to do there, that's the end of my presentation, you'll be pleased to know. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump over to my browser, and I am going to bring up Morpheus, and I am going to start going through a presentation. And maybe Simon, if you're there still and have audio, does that look okay? You know what it should sort of look like? Is it visible on the screen okay?
Yeah, you might want to be full screen, James. I think you're not full screen yet. There you go. That's great.
Okay. Excellent. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to give you a short demo of Morpheus. I think I've got about about an hour left, so I don't want to take up all of that time. It would be nice to have any questions. Like I think was said at the beginning, if we could have any questions, if you want to ask questions in the chat channel, please do so. I'm very happy to try and address those as we go through. But what I will do is I will go through this sort of demo process, and hopefully that will raise some ideas, some thoughts, and then potentially some questions from you. So I'm going to be using the browser interface, and I've actually logged into Morpheus, and I've actually come into a tenant. So Morpheus is multi-tenanted. Again, I mentioned earlier, one of our very popular users install bases is our MSPs, our managed service providers. We have many of them. In fact, Europe for us is the hotbed of MSPs. We have them across a lot of Northern Europe, here in the UK, down in the Middle East. So we've got a number of the large telcos are starting to do their own MSP services, and they've picked Morpheus as the front end to their services, which is very exciting for us. But here I am in the browser, and I'm in this tenant. So I'm in a subset of Morpheus, and I'm actually sort of in a specific customer, and this is Pied Piper. I'm actually logged in as a specific user. I'm logged in as Dinesh, and Dinesh is a user. He's a developer. He's one of our sort of maybe our typical users of Morpheus. He has the job of going out, writing new applications. And rather than us give him a log on to the vCenter and let him build his own servers or raise support tickets and have to wait for the machines to be built, or he goes out and puts his credit card into Amazon because he can go and build services quicker, we've given him access to Morpheus. So we're looking at a day in the life of a sort of a developer with Morpheus, and I'm going to keep it very simple. But what he can do is he can come up here, and a main thing he can do is look at instances. Instances are, if you think about it as a service. So, it's maybe a web server, it's maybe a database, it could be an operating system, but it's something running somewhere that we can either run applications on, put data into, or just interact with. So Dinesh has a number of machines running, and this list here is his list of visibility, what he's allowed to see. And that's based on a role-based access control, and then tying into groups. And we are a member of a group called Dev Team, and that group Dev Team has access to a number of clouds. And if you look down this list, we've got machines running on Amazon, and we've got machines running in VMware. So in this one view, we're seeing multi-cloud. And in fact, these also, I know we'll see in a moment, Dinesh has access to actually a number of other clouds as well. We've got machines in different states, and we're going to come back to this in a moment. This is our day 2 operational view, and we'll come back and look at this in a little bit more depth in a moment. But what I want to do is Dinesh wants a new workload. So what he does is he comes in, he clicks, and he gets a catalog. he gets a marketplace. So again, those of you familiar with the public clouds will be familiar with this idea. You go up and you scan their marketplace for things that you can use. Uncurated, uncontrolled, you could just go and spin anything up. You could go and spend as much money as you like. You could spin up applications that maybe your organization doesn't approve of. Here with Morpheus, this list is controlled. Dinesh has access to this list because this is the things that we want him to use. If he's going to do web development, we want him to use Apache. If he's going to build an application server, we want it to run Tomcat. If he's going to use a database, we want him to use MySQL. We're not defining where at the moment. We're just saying these are the tools that you can use. We're going to hit Apache. So we're going to select that and we're going to go through and we get our group dev team. It's the only one we're a member of, but now we get some clouds. And what we've said is, okay, Morpheus knows how to provision Apache. And in our library, we've got access to Apache on Amazon, Azure, Nutanix, and VMware. So maybe in this organization, they've had VMware for some time. They've got big infrastructure and it's there and available. Maybe they've invested in a HCI recently and they put Nutanix in and we've given them access to that. And then we're maybe looking at Amazon and Azure as something we might use in the future. If I just show you what I can do is I can click Amazon. We have then a policy engine. This is something that's very, I do a lot of POCs with customers and we'll talk about that towards the end. We're very happy to do proof of concepts with customers to show them the product in action in their environment. And a very popular one is the ability to lock the names of servers. As you build it, use a proper map of how the machine should be called, how the name should be set up, etc. So here we have a variable string that's going to build a name for us. We're going to go through and we now get an option to run this as a container. I've said before, Morpheus is already in the world of containerization. So we have a Kubernetes or a Docker container in our library of Apache. So we've offered it to the user because we've got a Kubernetes cluster running on Amazon. So Morpheus has sort of joined all the dots behind the scenes, said, you've got Apache, you've got access to Amazon. On Amazon is Kubernetes. Therefore, if you want, you could use a Kubernetes or a containerized version of Apache, or we also have some EC2 instances of Apache as well, if you'd rather use those. So I can select that, and now you see it dynamically changes, and now we start to build out. And now I go and Morpheus pulls through plans from Amazon. So it's gone and got the plans that are available to us for use with Apache on Amazon. It's then pulling through a cost for that. For using public cloud, cost is very important. So we've got a cost associated with that. We've brought that down from the public cloud. So we go every 24 hours and get a cost item for each of the plans. But the other thing that we can do, as I mentioned this already, is we can price up internal infrastructure as well. So here you can see that we've got VMware appearing as a cloud, and we've got a cost for a similar plan in VMware would cost us $22. So, maybe Dinesh realizes that he's got to be sensitive to costs. And again, with our policy engine, Morpheus can put limits. And this is something, again, that's very interesting to our customers, is we can set up a spend limit. So we can say, okay, across all of the clouds where you have access to, you've got a spend limit of $500 a month, $1,000 a month. So we can stop people spending crazy amounts of money and suddenly getting a bill at the end of the month that nobody's expecting. And now you have to run around inside infrastructure and in IT and justify the spend or work out why that spend happened. We can stop that before it happens. So we've got a cost here for this machine. Let's say we want to continue with Amazon at the moment. As you can see, if you've used Amazon, you'll recognize things like being able to pick out resource pool, storage, network. But what we've done here is we've connected this cloud, and we're going to look at this in a moment. We're going to go back into the sort of management piece of this. We've provided the cloud at the management layer, and then we've limited which bits of the cloud, which network security groups, which networks this user can use. If he was a power user, we could go all the way through to actually giving him the ability to add his own cloud and add his own network. So you can really choose how much you want to give from a capability point of view. Here we're saying, Dinesh, you're a good guy. We want you to do your job, but we don't want you to worry about configuring Amazon. We're doing that for you. If I just go back, what I'd like to show you is if I change this to VMware now, so I've gone back one step, I'm now picking VMware, and I get that same naming convention. I go next. I get the same offer of a container because I've got Kubernetes running in VMware. So I can spin up a container if I want. Or what I can do is sit it behind, or I can pick a VMware running VMware VM running in my infrastructure. Don't want to get too deep into this, but the library function is very powerful, and that could be, you're familiar with VMware templates. That could be a VMware template that is Ubuntu with Apache already built into it, or it could be just an Ubuntu image, and our library function would then allow you to run scripts, maybe Ansible playbooks, maybe bash scripts that then build out Apache on that machine as on demand. So you can really actually simplify your template library as well. We see customers going down to maybe just one standard Windows template, one standard Ubuntu template, one standard CentOS template, and then they give Morpheus the process of, okay, if I want Microsoft SQL Server, provision that Windows server and then put SQL Server on there. Or if I want Apache, provision Ubuntu and then install Apache on there during the build process and script it out. So you've got, again, flexibility there. Now I pick my plan. Again, what Morpheus gives you is the ability to set plans. Now here, again, just for you VMware guys, I'm using the vCenter to do this. I'm connected at the vCenter level. If, again, I've mentioned MSPs many times, if you do come from an MSP background or have an MSP requirement, we also support vCloud Director, for example, so we can tie in with that. But here I can set my plans. So you've built these in Morpheus. We put a cost associated with CPU, disk, memory, and we get that presented to us. And again, similarly, I can now go through and I can pick from the resources that I've been given access to. And I'll show you the other side of this VMware environment when we go back in a moment. You'll see there's a lot more networking, a lot more resource pools. There's not much more storage. That is about the storage in our demo lab. It's very simple. But here you can also see, for example, we're doing an IP address management. We're going to our VLAN here. But on that VLAN, we're actually doing our IP address management using info blocks. So that's one of the integration points. We've tied in info blocks with Morpheus using our codeless integration. We've said, yep, we want to use info blocks on this network, get me IP addresses. And that's all we had to do to set that up. I go next. It takes me through to a automation panel. In here, this will dynamically change based on the type of service we're building. If there's an operating system, it wouldn't offer me a load balancer or deployment or auto scaling. It would just offer me backup and life cycling, for example. If it was a database, it might offer me some other options. But because this is a web service, Morpheus in our library, we've tagged it with certain things. So we could drop a WAR file on here. If I want to, as I build this, I want to put a WAR file. Or I can leave that blank, and then as the user builds an application through a CI/CD pipeline, they can push a WAR build onto here if they want to. We can tag into load balancers. I don't actually have a load balancer allowed down to this subtenant at the moment, but if I had an F5, an AVI, a NetScaler, we can tie in, and the user would just say, yep, I want a load balancer, give me a VIP, and Morpheus would create that as part of the build process. That then ties into scaling. We can horizontally scale applications. We're getting into application management. If I build a web service, I can associate workloads with it. I can say, okay, if the CPU goes over 75%, spin up another node and horizontally scale my application. So we have that auto scaling process, again, across all clouds. A lot of things here to remember is, yes, I'm doing this particular one on VMware, but this panel would look exactly the same if I was doing it on Amazon. We'd have the same functionality, the same capability. Backups, this is where we offer integration. We actually have our own built-in, very basic backup. For VMware, it would just be a snapshot and then image copy, real basic. It's just a utility. But for our enterprise VMware customers, we tie into things like Veeam, Commvault, Avamar. The other thing which I really like, again, as a sort of ex-VMware operator, we also offer the ability to do VMware snapshots. So if I'm in a machine, I'll show you this in the day 2 activity. If I'm in a machine, I want to make a change to it. Often it's best practice, just take a snapshot, make your change. You're happy with it. Yep, then commit the snapshot and move on. Now, I do it in my demo lab all the time, my personal lab, before I upgrade the version of Morpheus, for example, because I'm often using test builds and things that might cause a problem. So being able to do that from the Morpheus interface rather than the vCenter is a powerful capability. But if I use Veeam, for example, here, I now get, okay, pick your Veeam backup job name, give it a backup, and then Morpheus will run that. I'm actually ex-Veeam. I used to work for Veeam, and the mantra is, where it's all good doing the backup, you also need to do the restore. So Morpheus on the other end of that will also give the user the ability to do a restore as well. It's just a full image restore at that level. That's all we want to offer. We don't want to try and recreate Veeam inside Morpheus. If you want to go more detailed than that, then you would go into the Veeam interface. And finally, I'm going to just quickly look here at life cycling. Again, something that our enterprise customers in particular, worry about is, okay, I'll give these users the ability to go and build lots of stuff, but I know they're going to spin it up and they're going to leave it just sitting around. They're going to forget about it, or they're going to say, I need it now, and they're not going to use it for 6 months. So here, and this is great for our demo lab, you see that we've got a shutdown and expiry policy, and they're hard coded. I can't change those. That's our policy. You can either make it a soft or a hard policy. But after 1 day, this machine will power down. After 2 days, it will be deleted. So if I forget to tidy up after this demo, I know in a couple of days at least, it will be cleaned up. Obviously, it's a bit strong. You wouldn't do this in even a test and dev lab, or definitely not in production. So it's fully configurable. And there's a workflow behind it as well. So as that expiry comes up, I will get an email. I can actually request an extension, and I can set rules around how much longer I can have. It's just a really powerful feature, particularly if you're talking to enterprises or you're using it yourself. Think about, if I can make sure that engineers don't leave machines lying around and I then have to try and work out what they are before I delete them, it's a great capability. And another one just to mention here is power scheduling. A great way to save money is to power resources down when they're not being used overnight, over the weekends when developers are not in. So we have the ability to set power schedules as well. So power up, power down, and again, across every cloud that we support. I'm just going to hit next, hit complete. We get a summary of what we're going to get. It's resolved the name now. So there's the name it's going to give this machine based on the variable. We're going to hit complete, and that's going to go and build that machine. And that really has taken way longer to talk through than obviously it would actually take. And actually, if you want to have a look at Morpheus and try it out, you could actually have installed Morpheus. Okay, the installation might take a little bit longer, some scripts that need to run. Once you've got Morpheus installed, you could have connected to your vCenter and actually provisioned that Apache server in about the time it's taken me to walk that through for you. So, very easy to set up and configure is a very important part of Morpheus. Okay, the machine's building. What it is, what I want to do is just show you this day 2 activity piece. It's great that we can give users the ability to go and do the self-service. This is very basic. We're going to look at some more advanced stuff in a minute. But what about, okay, well now that just develops a workload for my support team, because I've got people spinning up machines everywhere, and now they have a problem. They've got a lot more machines sitting out. They may have configured them correctly, or they've done them in the wrong way. They've made them too small, too big, and they have to raise a support ticket to understand that. Well, what Morpheus does is give you this day 2 operational view. So what I can do is I can click on any of these machines. Let's pick on this CentOS box here that's running on VMware. We'll start with that one. If I click on that, because of where it is, I have visibility of it. In fact, Dinesh actually built this machine, so it is his. But he would have visibility of anything that's built by his team in that dev group. But he can see this machine. He can see the configuration of it, how it was built. You can see that there's that expiry rule. So this one's going to get shut down in 4 hours, and you can see that then it's going to get deleted tomorrow. But we can also see things like performance data. So we have a performance data graph here. So we can show the user, okay, if you think your machine is running slow, maybe it's a memory thing, or maybe you're thrashing the CPU. So we'll give them visibility of the performance data within the machine. But also we can do things like we can bring back the log files. So, if I'm trying to troubleshoot a problem, I can actually bring back the log files into Morpheus. So we have a very simple log aggregation engine. And in fact, also on this bar, you'll see another one, which is console. And I can actually provide, and this is a setting that you set at the administrative level, but I can actually give the user a console access. So a VMware hypervisor console access to this machine as well. So maybe if I can't SSH into it, or I can't RDP into it, then I could at least get a console session into here. And at the moment, our demo lab is running a bit slow here. Somebody's disabled something there, so it's not quite coming up. Hopefully that's the failure of my demo. Let's see, that might come up in a moment anyway. But what that does is, I say, is move that workload from the user or from the support desk into this self-service help as well. I can go and start troubleshooting. Is it too small? Is the machine hung? Because the console, I can't even get into the console. Is the machine hung? In which case, I can come up here and I can do things like I can stop and start the server. So I can do a quick, simple reboot. Maybe it is the fact that it's too small. This has only got a 512 mega memory. Maybe I want to resize that and I want to, up the memory. And I can do that, or I can add more storage, or I can add more networking to this service. This is all role-based access control. If I don't want users doing this after they've built it, I can actually turn this capability off. But like I say, you might want to give them the ability in the test and dev lab, but maybe not allow them to change things in production. And again, you can be that granular in the control. And this goes all the way through down into things, the ability to run scripts, tasks, workflows, which are different types of processes you can run on the machine. That we could have a task that maybe is an Ansible playbook that we give the user access to, or we have a workflow, which is a set of steps that also have different steps in them: power on machine, power off machine. Even the deletion of a machine, we can have a workflow step that then goes and tidies things up. But the idea is that you can offload that day 2 activity as well. Something I'm just going to talk about, I'm not going to be able to show this in this demo. It's so new, actually, we don't have much around it other than in our documentation, but we actually looked at some of our capability here. And this is sort of the way Morpheus works, is we looked at some of our capability to do this. We did a lot of work around, which isn't working, but through the console. For those of you who like the world of technology, we use Guacamole behind the system here to give us the console. That also gives us a remote desktop. So if you don't want users to have console access, you can actually set it up that they would get an RDP or an SSH session to the machine. And then if you've got this running on public cloud, you could have an SSH session or an RDP session as well. What we've actually done is we've extended that. We've actually provided now in Morpheus a full VDI capability as well. So we have a full virtual desktop infrastructure management tool built into Morpheus as well. It's in our latest release of our product. It's available for testing with all the sort of resource pool management and the ability to spin up servers, give users access to them through a VDI console. And we're very excited by that. So if you are looking at VDI or have an experience of VDI, I'd encourage you to have a look at Morpheus and see what you think. Okay, I'm going to come out of here now for a moment, and I'm going to do a quick review of sort of more advanced things. Often what I get asked about is, well, you've built a machine, that's great, you've built a single server, but my users never do that. And in fact, there's that Apache server we just built. It's up and running now. It's in running. You can see it's picked up an IP address, it's changed the host name, it's there, it's available for me to interact with and use if I wanted to. The other thing, remember I talked about all those orchestration, that messy diagram. If I have this connected to CMDB, say for example ServiceNow, we've actually got a CMDB record for this. It's got the IP address. We could have tagged it into Veeam for backup. Also, we're now capturing the usage data. We're seeing how long this machine is running for, how much resource it's using, and we're keeping track of that in Morpheus for our FinOps people at the end, our reporting and other resources like that. But the other thing I want to do is just quickly talk about blueprinting. And this is where we can build out multi-tier applications. Now, what we've done with this particular user inside this tenancy is we've limited him to what he can do, and he can use a Morpheus blueprint. And what a Morpheus blueprint is it uses our library items, and it allows you to very quickly and easily build multi-tier applications. So here I've got one which is made up of a web server and a database. And maybe if I wanted to, I could add another tier. Maybe I want to add messaging in here, and I click on plus, and you see I get my list of applications that I'm allowed to use. I can hit Tomcat, maybe not the perfect messaging queue, but you get the idea. And then I can start configuring this. So, you know, this one's set up for VMware, and I can add that configuration, and I can go in now and I can start configuring this service. And this is the more advanced end of the configuration, because what I can do here is I can fill in the form. You've seen this already, the form where I set the size, the plan, the network, and all of those things. Even here, the infrastructure. So again, we see we've got a Tomcat container available to us. But the other thing I can do is I can start locking these, because I'm not actually going to provision this blueprint now. I save it and then I provision it as an app. And then what I can do is I can have the rules set within this blueprint so that when the user uses it, they can't make changes, or they can only change the things that I want them to be able to change. So here I've got this particular build is for VMware, but one of the powers of the Morpheus blueprinting is that if I wanted to, I could also come in here now and I could say, well, I'd like a build of this on Amazon as well, please. And I can go through and I can build this out. I can build this out on my Amazon cloud as well. And I can save that as a blueprint. And now when I provision this app, this blueprint, I can actually choose whether I want to do it on VMware or on AWS. So I get this multi-cloud blueprinting functionality, which is very powerful. Again, not going to go into that in too much depth. What it finally does is it gives the user the ability to go, well, actually what I want is an app. So if I click on my apps,
Hi, Noam.
Yeah.
This is Simon.
Okay.
I think we may have lost James for a minute.
Okay.
So perhaps would it be good to think about the questions? So the 4 questions that we talked about yesterday, whilst he comes back, or is it too early?
Yes, sure. Yes, we can show the question.
And I'm happy. I have the questions if it helps, but if you have them, great.
Okay. Ok. Voilà. En entendant James qui revienne, je pense qu'il a un petit souci de PC. Je vous propose de faire une petite question, une petite série de questions. Je vous propose d'aller sur de scanner le QR code ici que vous avez, ou d'aller directement sur le site sido.com, voilà, et de scanner le code, voilà. Et je vais commencer les premières questions. Dites-moi si c'est OK pour vous. On va faire ça en attendant le retour de James. Vous allez voir, les questions ont porté sur la première partie de la présentation. Allez. Voilà. Je commence donc. Première question, according to IDC's Cloud Pulse, what percentage of enterprises use both public and private clouds? Allez, C'était dans les pratiquement avant le dernier slide, je crois. Non, c'était le deuxième slide, je crois. Allez, deuxième slide, c'était au tout début. Allez, je vous laisse le temps de vous connecter. Pour ceux, faites avec votre téléphone, hein, vous scannez le QR code à côté, c'est assez facile. Autrement, vous tapez slido.com et vous tapez le numéro de session 2587. 2587. Voilà. On n'est que 10. Je vais être obligé de jouer alors. Voilà, James is back, ok. Voilà, allez, on continue encore notre petite série de questions. Hop, la deuxième question. How many out-of-the-box native integrations are built into the Morpheus platform? James,
Yes.
just a question about this question. How I can integrate my solution if my solution doesn't part of your list of native integration for Morpheus. For example, I have a solution of backup like Dell technology Power Protect.
No, you're always asking. Yeah,
Okay.
no, it's a great question. So there's two answers. One is, today you could do that through scripting. We talk about our native codeless integrations because we're trying to make it as simple as possible to integrate with as many, use those enterprise tools. We don't want you to have to sit, inside an enterprise organization writing lots and lots of scripts before you can actually use Morpheus. So that's the purpose of our codeless integration. But if you have an external service, like say a backup that we don't support, and I did this with some of the backups before we actually supported them natively. You can, as you build a server or a service, an application in Morpheus, you can have workflows triggered that run scripts that maybe go and set up a backup job in the Dell Technologies backup for that VM. Pass the name, pass the IP, or if you are agent-based, install the agent into the machine. So you can do those sorts of things. Just what you won't have then in Morpheus is visibility of that process of the backup. That's all then done in the backup tool. Going forward, what we've done, one of the challenges we've got as a business is we've got 90 plus, just to give away an answer there of one of your questions, we've got the 90 plus integrations. That's challenging for us to maintain. The products are always changing, new versions are coming out. So what we've done over the last year or so of our own development is we have changed the architecture of our own product, and now each integration is a module. So there is a backup integration module, and then what we've offered, what we have available now is a developer toolkit that allows you to then write your own integration into your own backup product and drop it into the Morpheus framework. We call them plugins. So going forward, now backup isn't actually available. We're doing a slow rollout. The big one we want to get done really quickly is cloud. So we're going to allow you to write your own cloud integrations. So that's exciting. But then we're going to add the backup, the IP address, the IPAM tools and those sorts of things. And so you'll be able to write, if we don't have an integration today, either we will be able to write the integration faster because it's now not part of core code, or Dell could write an integration for their own backup tool and drop it into Morpheus, or a customer could write it as well. And we're making that toolkit available to the users.
Okay, thank you, James. The last question, my friend, in Gartner, the critical capabilities for cloud management platforms, in which categories has Morpheus outpaced the competition with the highest scores? Provisioning, not sure. Non, je pense que comment. Huh. Huh.
Yeah, it's good tested. Are people watching the?
Yes. Application lifecycle.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. James.
Excellent.
Yes.
I'll take back. Yeah.
Yes.
Apologies, everybody. I don't know if it was explained to you. I have a Lenovo laptop. Don't laugh at me. I like my Lenovo laptop, except Lenovo and Microsoft have broken one of the drivers, and it just decides to reboot every now and then. Usually in the middle of a demo. It's just very frustrating. So I fixed it. It was 2 months. I had no crashes. Now I've had two in one day. So I've gone back to where I was. Just quickly to remind you, I'm just building an app. This is a multi-tier application now, and I just want to quickly show you this, just to show you the ease. But now, you know, I'm building a database, I'm building a web service, and I hit next. I don't have to answer any questions. The administrator has done that all for me. They've sized it, they've positioned it. You know, let's say there was nothing for me to answer. They've hit next. And that now goes, and that is now building a multi-tier application for me in the environment. So just as you saw that single web server get built, now this is building 2 machines. Okay, it's not many, but it's now building 2. But also it's doing quite a lot of clever stuff. It's, for example, here, part of the blueprint says, well, the database needs to be available before the web service becomes available. So you see this one is paused, and this one is launching. When this is complete and in action, then it will release the Apache server to build. We're going to actually deploy apps on here. It's going to put a WAR file on the Apache server. It's actually going to put data into the database as well. It's going to connect the two together. It's going to use, oh, it's failed as demo lab, typical. It's going to use, actually it's still launching. It's just the status of the, it's not ready. It's going to use secure credentials to connect the app server to the database engine as well. And there's a couple of ways you can do that. You can either embed those in the blueprint, or Morpheus has a Cypher server. So if you've got into particularly containerized applications, you know, key value store and the ability to have credentials in an app and then share those to validated other services, Morpheus has that built in. We have a Cypher server built in. So you can do all of that all directly within Morpheus without going outside of our own framework. But that will build the app. It becomes available. And then once it's up and running, which will just take a little bit longer, obviously, than the previous one, we get, it's actually this one here. This is the same app that somebody else built. You know, we can see the machine, we can see, again, the status here. You can see where the machine has been powered off. It's been adhering to the overnight power off policy. And we can do things like, look at the history of this, if there was any apps, if anybody's actually done any changes on the machine, all the way through to Morpheus has a built-in monitor as well. Again, another capability of Morpheus is application monitoring. We check that the application is available. We can give you a green tick, a red tick, a yellow tick as to, is the application there? And that's all part of a monitoring piece as well. So again, I'm not going to be able to cover all of these in detail, but you can see there's a lot of capability in Morpheus straight out of the box. Now, what I'm going to do is going to change pace now for the last, I'm going to spend about 10 minutes on this last bit. Again, still a lot to get through, but what I want to do is actually go up and show you, if you like the Wizard of Oz, behind the curtains of what we're doing, how this is put together. So I've quit impersonate. What I've done there, and it's an administrative functionality, is I'd gone into administration tenants. So here's our tenant management piece, and there's our tenant Pied Piper. And what I'd done was, there's my user Dinesh, and I'd gone more and impersonate. So I dropped in as Dinesh, and when I quit impersonating, I've now dropped back up. I could do that because of my administrative level. But here you can see the user management. So I have user management inside this subtenant. Here's our roles, very granular ability. And in fact, if I select a user here, so if I click on Dinesh, I can actually see his role. I can see all the things he can't do. So there's all the things he can't do. And then if I scroll down my list, there's some things he can do. So we want him really looking at provisioning and self-service, and that's what we want him to focus on. So you can actually look at individual roles that people have, and there's a whole piece around that. The other thing you can do at this level, just for information, again, our enterprise customers really like that, is we can do the user management in Morpheus, but even more importantly, we can tie into identity source tools. So if you already have, for example, Active Directory or LDAP, or you're perhaps using Azure AD, as we now do in our own labs, we use Azure AD with two-factor authentication. You can tie Morpheus into those tools and use those to do your user management. So user logs in, the credential management is done on the external identity management tool. It then passes back a token to Morpheus and says, yes, this user can have access. And in this case, it would say, okay, here's the AD groups the user is a member of. And then we at Morpheus can map those AD groups to Morpheus roles. So the user then logs in and then they get access and they are allowed to do what you want them to do. If they leave the organization, you turn off their AD credentials, they can no longer access Morpheus. It's all done then within your enterprise identity management tool. And that's a really popular integration, as you say, very codeless. You just give us credentials onto the Active Directory server, and we then manage that process for you. I'm going to look at a number of these items. I'm going to get through quite a bit, but the other one I want you to look at is integrations. This is the starting point of the integrations. This is one of the areas you can do integrations. But again, I want to show you how easy it is if we wanted to use an external service. So for example, I talked about automation. You know, I could build that Linux box with Apache, and I could actually have, you know, if I was using VMware, I could have built that as a template. I could have gone through the whole process of doing it and built the template. Or I could actually have scripts attached, takes that Linux box and then provisions it, then runs Apache install. And I could do that with bash scripts if I wanted to, or I maybe want to do that with Ansible. Like I say, very popular. So if I want to integrate Ansible, really simple. You connect, you give Morpheus credentials onto your Git repo where your Ansible playbooks are. Morpheus then becomes the master for your Ansible environment. And as you then build servers, and I'll show you this in a moment, you can then set at a cloud level or a group level. You can say, okay, I want to use Ansible on this cloud, machines running on this cloud. And now every time you build a server, it now adds the machine to the Ansible inventory. And you can run scripts or the Ansible playbooks as the server builds, when you power the machine up, when you power it down, when you delete it. Or you can give the user the ability to run their own playbooks when they want to, or you could actually run them on a schedule. We have a scheduling engine where you could run them overnight. And another really nice feature that I like, and we talk to a lot of finance and healthcare and very heavily regulated organizations who are really security conscious, as we should all be, but you know, very security conscious. And one of the things we've done for Ansible is I've talked about our agent. The way our agent works is when you build a server, our agent gets installed into the server at runtime, and it communicates, it's given a unique key, and it creates a 443 connection back to the Morpheus server. So it initiates the communication back to the Morpheus server on port 443 and creates a secure tunnel. We then pass performance data, log files, software inventory, and other services over that link. But also what that then allows Morpheus to do is we can then interact on that machine through our, what we call our command bus. So now if I want to run an Ansible playbook on that remote server, I can do it over that port 443 link, and I can shut down SSH, and I can also shut off WinRM so that I can reduce my attack surface. So very popular. I did a demo with a finance organization yesterday, and they really liked that capability because they're looking at Ansible, but they're really struggling with the security around it. As you can see, there's other integrations. We have one for VRealize Orchestrator. I know there's probably a lot of VMware strong players on here on this call. Just I have to say, one of the plays that we really have is against VRealize Automation Suite. those of you looking at Morpheus maybe understand that tool, you can sort of see there's a real big crossover. And actually, most of our enterprise customers are customers that have looked at VRealize Automation, tried to achieve, have an idea, a vision of what they want to do, and have just really struggled to do it. With Morpheus, they found they can do it very quickly, very easily, in a very powerful way. So VRealize is something that we just compete with. It's the only way to say it. However, if you've been doing a lot of work, and in this transition from VRA 7 to 8, you may have a lot of VRealize orchestrator scripts that you like and use. Well, Morpheus has got an integration, so you can then reuse those orchestrator scripts. So as you build a server, we can use those as part of the process if you want us to. All the way through, as I say, lots of different integrations. ServiceNow, again, is a very popular one for us. Most large enterprises have some form of ITSM. And here, for example, again, just to show you, you connect us to the ServiceNow host, put in the credentials, and at that point, we will start integrating with ServiceNow. We can update the CMDB. As we build that Apache server, we can take the host name, the IP address, the configuration details, and write them into the CMDB. You don't have to do anything else to make that happen. But then you can extend that. Here you can do custom mappings if you have other fields that you want to write into the database in ServiceNow. If you want to do workflows, you can tag those in Morpheus. We actually also have a plugin for ServiceNow. So that's a very powerful and very popular integration as well. But we also have a number of other integration points. So I'm just going to tick off a couple of the popular ones. A big one is networking. We have a range of integrations at the networking level. We have things like NSXV, NSXT, so that SDN type capability. We're seeing a lot of demand for that now, particularly with the sort of the transition from V to T. That's a very popular integration. Through IPAM, IP address management. Again, we want to get into self-service. Really don't want to be using DHCP. You want to be using fixed IP addresses. Makes life much easier with services. So Morpheus has a built-in or is integration to a number of enterprise IPAM tools. But actually, and again, if you want to try this in your home lab, we actually have our own built-in IPAM tool. So you can actually give Morpheus a set of IP addresses, and we can do fixed IP address management if you want to try it without the DHCP. But we can also be tagged in, again, popular things for enterprises. We can be tagged into the domain controller. So just like you can use AD for your user management, you can also use, you might want to, as you build your Windows servers, add them to your domain. Morpheus can be connected to your domain controller. You no longer have to script that. It's now just a step. You've told Morpheus. Morpheus will handle that process. Once the machine is available, we will provision it into and add it to your domain for you. So you can do that. And like I say, just a couple you've seen me mention before, load balancers. Here's our list of integrations with load balancers we support. And also I mentioned backup, so I'll quickly look at that as well. We have integrations into a number of backup tools, Avamar Commvault. And as I said, if you then wanted to add maybe one from Dell, I think they have a backup tool of their own. You can add in the future. It's not available yet for backup, but you'll be able to write your own plugin and drop that in here and make that available as a backup service. The final thing I show on integrations is the last and biggest one is clouds, just because it is the biggest one, but it's also the most important. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on groups. Here are the groups in the tenancy I'm in currently. Here's a group called demo. Clouds are always inside a group, so it's easier to come into a group to look at clouds. And in this group, I have 20 clouds configured. When I click on that, you can see I've got a whole range of things. I've got Amazon, I've got Azure, I've got Google. These are what are configured. These are usable. If as a user, I've got access to this group, I could now go and build my Apache server on these clouds. I could go and provision a Ubuntu box or a Windows server on these clouds if they're in my library. So these are all configured. I have no access to these as a user directly. I have no credentials on any of these clouds. So that's that cloud brokerage piece. We're brokering onto those clouds and allowing users to use them under the control of Morpheus. But just for the complete picture, if I just scroll down here, this is our actual supported list. So all of those integrations we have. So when we're looking at what clouds do we support, we have Amazon, Azure, Google. They're the big three, of course. But we also have, we see quite a bit of Alibaba. We regularly get asked for Huawei. It's used by a lot of, there's a lot of clouds out there that are based on Huawei. They're rebranded Huawei. For example, Open Telecom Cloud is based on Huawei, which is actually based on OpenStack. But as you can see, wide range of enterprise clouds. And on the private infrastructure side, we have everything from Azure Stack through some physical clouds, which is slightly odd, but we actually can do bare metal as well. And in fact, something we've just recently added is support for Mass.io from Canonical. If you've played with that, really good tool for bare metal server management. And now you can build from our Morpheus library onto bare metal servers as well. A lot of our larger MSPs really like that capability. Through Nutanix, through OpenStack, down to, of course, VMware. We support a number of flavors of VMware. vCloud Director for our MSPs, VMware on AWS if you are using that. We can work just directly with an ESXi host, obviously with the limitations. It was a bit of a science project for one of our developers. Obviously, it doesn't have an API, so he just wanted to try it out. But it's nice for a lab. But our, the daddy, the one that the majority of our customers are using is VMware. And just to show you, if I click on that, to add it as a cloud, real simple. This top section is to do with Morpheus metadata. We're going to give it a name, something meaningful to our users. We're going to decide whether we want subtenants to use it or not. And then really simple, what you do, connect it to the vCenter through the SDK link. So we're using the APIs, you give us credentials, and that's it. You're connected, and we will then start to allow you to provision workloads onto your VMware environment. That's simple. You can then get into sort of deeper configuration. You can decide if you want people to go into specific clusters. You can decide whether you want us to inventory. We can actually be pointed at a VMware environment and bring everything that's already running into the environment and give you visibility of it. And there's that hypervisor console that didn't work for me, but that's where we can turn, one of the areas you can turn it on and off for the users. And then under advanced options, we've got some things like some specifics for VMware, what sort of provisioning you want to use. Do you want to give different network types? But now this is where we tie our integrations together. So do you remember I said about adding a domain controller? Well, if as I build a server onto this environment, into this cloud, I want to add it to a domain automatically, I come in here, I select my domain, and that's it. User doesn't have to do anything else. As they build that server, it will be added to the domain for me. Further down, we'll see things like here's where I can tie in with one of those backup integrations. So I've got Veeam integrated. Now, as the user builds, they'll be offered Veeam as their backup. I can tie in a DNS service. As I build it, I want to update my A record. I can do that on my DNS service. Here's my Ansible integration. Here's my ServiceNow integration. By setting those options, as I build in here, the machine will be built in a particular way. It will use particular services. It will go and get resources from particular areas, and it's all automated. You don't have to, you're not writing scripts to write those workflows. It's being done for you. A couple of other things for you here. Something we have, and I'll touch on this just before I get to the end, is we also have the ability to do guidance, where very simply we can just watch. We're in a privileged position. We're watching all the machines being built. We're watching the configuration of those machines. We know the configuration of them. And then we can also watch the performance of them. And we can tie those two things together. And we can say, okay, you've given this machine 8 gigs of memory, but it's only using 2 on a regular basis. Why don't you make it smaller? On VMware, that's going to save you resource. On Amazon, Azure, Google, it's going to save you money. So guidance has been a very, very popular feature for Morpheus since we added it. But just to show you, I don't want to run out of time here, but very quickly, if I click on VMware, here's that cloud that I was linked into earlier. And I can, as an administrator, so this is an administrator view. Dinesh did not have this view, but here you can see how much we're spending internally on our cloud. We can see how it's configured. We've got a Kubernetes cluster running on there. So that's, built out using Morpheus. We can look at the VMs that are on there that we have discovered, these machines that we found up there. But here we have access to things like the networks, the data stores, etc. And do you remember when Dinesh used the network? He only saw 2, provisioned the VM. This is why, because we made just 2 networks available to Pied Piper. So we've got control of tenant management, group management, user management, even right down to the resources inside the infrastructure. And that's, again, the same across all of the clouds that we have. Finish off, just jumping around, but behind all of this, at the FinOps end, you have all of the ability to report on everything that you've seen, how people are using services, where they're spending money, all the way through to things like the ability to help. We actually can run reports where if you've got us connected to multiple clouds, we can actually give you migration advice based around cost. So I'm running on Amazon today and it's costing me this. If I moved it to Azure tomorrow, how much would it cost me? Or if I moved it back into VMware on our internal costs, how much would it cost me? So we have a migration report costings, all the way through to, I mentioned software. We can actually do software inventory, which also ties into security scanning. And if you have managers who like pretty pictures, and you want to show them how they're spending their money or how you're controlling the spend, you can also look at this through the analytics view. So a graphical set of glasses on the how we're spending money, again, how we're breaking it down, and we can go in and look at these, and we can break this down by tag, by project, by group. And then finally, last one is guidance. I mentioned this. This is where we can help you understand, okay, how are we spending money? Where are we spending it? And more importantly, how can we save it? So you can see here, we've got a bunch of machines that we're saying, look, this machine here running on Azure, it's got a particular plan. You could change that to another plan. You could save yourself some money, save yourself $70 a month. And I've actually got this set up so it can actually also look at different regions if I want it to, the way I've got the cloud set up. What I can actually do is I can execute that. Morpheus won't just automatically execute it. We decided not to do that. But if I wanted to, I could click that now and it'd go and make that change. And it would be a reconfiguration of that machine. But we'll also look at machines that need upsizing. But also for public cloud, we'll look at how you use reserved instances and purchase plans and things like that, and help you understand how you can save money at that level. And that's something that we're working on. We've added a number of other areas that we can look at those. I'm going to stop there because I don't want to try and push too much in here. I wanted to really give you a flavor of Morpheus. But before I do, I mentioned, sort of maybe testing Morpheus out. One of the things you can do is we do have a community edition. We're in a VMUG, we're in the VM user group here. I know community editions are popular, and we have a community edition of Morpheus that's available to you. It will allow you to manage up to 25 VMs, basically, across 3 clouds. It's an unlimited, other than that, it's an unlimited license, and you can go and get that today. And you would do that by going to morpheushub.com. So this is our Reddit page for this. But if you want to do it, you go to our Morpheus Hub license site. And if I just quickly log out here, you come here and you log in, or you create a register here. And when you've logged in, you'll be offered a community license. You could select a community license and it will provide that to you, and also access to the software. The other thing you can do, if you're interested in looking at this in more detail inside your organization, is you can request a POC license in the same place. With that, I'm going to stop with 5 minutes to go to the hour. Thank you to those. I know sort of the numbers have dropped down a bit. I apologize for my issue in the middle there. Hopefully it wasn't too much of a problem. It looks like you got the quiz out of the way early, so that was good. But I'm going to hand back to you, Noam, to wrap up. And thank you, everybody, for your attendance.
Thank you, James. Thank you for this session. It was a great content, great demo, and yes, we have a chance to test the solution with the Morpheus community. Just as a quick joke, I have a platform for my my lab, but my lab was down this weekend because OVH Cloud burned out last Sunday, and my lab was in this data center. So no backup because it's a lab. Because Morpheus don't integrate natively Pure Protect, so I don't have the backup. It's a joke. Thank you again. Thank you everybody for your participation. If you have any question, feel free to ask the question now. Excuse me, James and Simon, I switch in French. Mardi prochain, nous avons aussi une session sur VRealize Automation. Donc, c'est un peu quand même dans la même philosophie. Donc, on reste sur comment le management cloud qui sera animé par l'excellent Vincent Méoc, que vous connaissez sûrement, enfin une bonne partie. Donc, restez sur le Slack si vous avez besoin, sur Twitter pour avoir les informations de connexion. On fera pas mal de communication prochainement. Donc voilà. Si vous avez des questions, allez-y, c'est maintenant. On va finir, la session. Donc n'hésitez pas. Merci encore en tout cas de votre participation. Vous avez été nombreux, une quarantaine et fidèles en plus. Donc c'était sympa. Donc écoutez, libérez les micros. Ou alors on se dit au revoir. Ok, pas de questions, mes amis. Ah, si, intégration avec Abus Kafka. Benjamin. Yes, a question, James. Any integration with Kafka bus? No.
Not at this time, no. I'm not familiar with Kafka directly. So no, we don't have a direct integration with that today. No.
Okay.
Does Morpheus best fit for an MSP? So our market, for those of you interested in sales and market size and things like that, in EMEA, Europe, our market splits about 40% MSPs and 60% enterprise. Morpheus works very, very well inside an enterprise. In fact, what we're helping enterprises do is become their own MSP internally, really. That's the way I think about it. But we are also, very popular with the MSP market. Some of our early customers were MSPs, and they've actually helped shape the product. So it's sort of, I wouldn't say we're better for MSPs than enterprise, but the multi-tenant definitely helps.
Okay. Any question, guys? Yes, François, I will try. Yes. Ok, écoutez, s'il n'y a pas d'autres questions, on va finir. On va vous laisser partir déjeuner. It's the time to lunch in French. So,
okay.
It's very important for French people.
Very important. Very important. I have worked for a French company. I know this is very important. So.
Yes. Thank you again, James and Simon. Thank you for your support for the community, French community. Thank you for the great session. This session will be available on YouTube. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye. Take care. See you soon.
Au revoir.
And have a nice day. Thank you, James.
Bye.
Thank you, Simon. Bye-bye.